So thank you guys for joining us. This is all about her. This topic is called First Movers, and we're going to talk about both the opportunities and the challenges of doing that. So I think first, tell them your story a little bit about you and your story. We're not going to dig into the challenges yet. They just need to know who you are, where you came from, and what your business is. And if you guys don't know Fengru's story, it's incredible because she's incredible. So go ahead and tell them about you and tell them what your business is. Then we're going to dig into the opportunities and the challenges.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, everyone. My name is Fengru Lin, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of TurtleTree. So we're a biotech company able to produce milk and milk ingredients without the animal. So we do it with a technology called precision fermentation, the same technology that is being used to produce rennet and insulin today.
Okay, but I want you to hear that again. She figured out how to produce milk without the cows. That is a little bit amazing and world-changing. And by the way, we held our EWC, our Entrepreneurship World Cup, 45,000 startups from 200 countries. She won. So that's yes, you should clap for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was quite the experience. We got it in 2020 during the heart of COVID, so we had to do it behind our computers.
Yeah, it's pretty. So go on.
Yeah. So so we're producing milk, and I think a lot of people would ask why milk, right? I think a lot of people might not know, but dairy is probably one of the biggest food industries in the world. It's about $770 billion today, bigger than beef, chicken, and fish combined. So it's a big industry, big environmental footprint as well. It accounts for 37% of global methane emissions. Big footprint here in Australia as well. 16% of all emissions come from agricultural emissions. So this is why we chose dairy as a sector.
Okay, but tell them a little about you, your background before that. Where did you come from and how did you even get to this problem?
Sure. So I'm originally from Singapore. My background was in business, was in tech. I used to work for tech companies, Salesforce, Google. My co-founder and we started a company about 4 years ago. And a bit about backstory, how the company started. It was actually a fun story. I was learning how to make cheese as a hobby. It was quite a fanatic period of time. I went up to Vermont, upstate of New York, for a couple of weeks to learn how to make cheese. And I wanted to replicate this whole process back in Singapore. But there are no cows, no agriculture there. So I had to go down to Indonesia to look for raw, fresh milk. And in Indonesia, there were still a lot of problems with contract farming, antibiotics and hormones put into the cows. So the milk quality suffers. The cheese doesn't stretch. There's lack of calcium. So I gave up that whole idea. And that was when I was still working at Google. And I met my co-founder in my office in Google, Singapore. And he was on stage talking about different technologies. Bit of background about Max. He was an entrepreneur in his previous life. And he just exited his previous company. And he was at my office talking about different technologies. And some of the technologies that he spoke about were companies like Memphis Meats and Blue Nalu. Do you guys know them? Some of you? So these are companies using cells to make meat and seafood without having to go through the animal. So this was like 4 or 5 years ago. This was groundbreaking. I just couldn't wrap my head around that. We started chatting about using similar methods to make milk. And we found out nobody was doing that. Nobody was using cell-based methods to produce full-spectrum milk. And that's where we started. We put in our first bit of our money, hired the first scientists, did a bit of research, and finally, middle of 2019, we filed our first patents, and that's when we started the company.
So a couple of important notes here, right? This is called First Movers and Industry Trailblazers. That's an important thing because a lot of times some of the, well, now your stuff is patents and science. We'll get into that. But there are a lot of companies that were really successful because they were the first mover. And a lot of entrepreneurs, when they look at a problem, they're like, somebody must have done this before. So they pass. And what happens is everybody thinks somebody must be doing this or somebody must have done it, so they don't even try. So one of the common elements of trailblazers and first movers is they don't accept that answer. I don't see a solution anywhere, so I'm going to go out and build one. So a lot of the big success stories were started because the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. They actually just took the step. So she was brave enough, literally, to just jump in. So let's talk. I know this is one of your favorite things to talk about. Let's talk about the listening process, because now you're starting to build something you think you know, but you need to get out in the marketplace and you need to listen to people and you need to start to work on, I want you to talk about product market fit, but I want you to talk about the listening to your customers and listening to the market part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first competed in EWC, if you guys watched the video, we are big on producing milk. We had this amazing technology, and we want to produce full milk because there's the potential to impact all the cows that are producing milk, right? So we started to talk to the Fonterras of the world, the Abbotts of the world, and we told them, hey, we can produce milk. What do you think about this? And they quickly told us, well, milk is $2 a gallon. Good luck trying to get to that price point with biotech. But if you want to produce milk, there are some high value ingredients that are found in milk. You should be looking at this. So they give us a list of half a dozen of these ingredients. Top of the list is this ingredient called lactoferrin. It trades on the market at $1,000 per kg. And you compare that to whey, you know, the whey that used to bulk up. It's a byproduct of cheese making, so it's in excess on the market. It costs about $1 to $3 per kg. Casein, for cheese making, costs $13 per kg. You should be focused on high value ingredient, lactoferrin, because it's $1,000.
So that's the pivot part of the story, right? When you start somewhere, but it doesn't happen if you're not listening. So talk about that change, right? Where were you in the process and how did you pivot? What did you guys decide to do? What was the decision-making process? Because now the market's telling you there might be a better opportunity than the thing you thought.
Absolutely. So we, on a side note, we are still working on the cell-based milk part of things. We have a small dedicated team, few resources dedicated to that. And the reason is, if we are able to produce full spectrum human milk, it has the potential for a lot of therapeutic applications as well. But that is a much longer term project. It has a probably 7 to 10 year R&D horizon. So that's something we can work on for the long term. But in the meantime, this lactoferrin, we are able to get to revenue generating a lot faster and easier. And a lot of the decision also came from how it's done. Because the technology that we're using, precision fermentation, is currently being used to produce things like insulin and rennet, there are existing contract manufacturers that we can use to scale up really fast. We don't have to recreate the entire system, the whole line of equipment. We don't have to do that. We can literally plug and play and get a product rolled out sooner rather than later.
So the pivot part of it, like we said, is super important in listening to the market. In fact, in our own case, when we launch, if you've ever seen a Priceline.com or a Booking.com commercial, all we advertise is selling hotels. But when we started, we were doing airlines. Like you were doing the cow's milk, and we just weren't that good at it, and the margins were better in hotels, and we listened to the market and completely changed. Pivoting is hard, but you talked about the team. I really want you to focus on what it took for you and your founder to build a team, and talk about the challenges of that, because for all of us, when you're a startup, one, when you have a radical new idea, and two, before you have a lot of funding and everything, it's hard to build a team. That's the thing I hear from startups all the time is, how do I get people to come work for me? So I want you to talk about the importance of your team and how you built it.
I think a lot of it is really storytelling. Being able to tell a story that investors, team members can tell their kids, can tell their husbands, and they can share it. It's not like something that is difficult to explain. So we had to talk about the big impact, talk about the milk, talk about the sustainability angle. EWC, winning EWC definitely helped us put ourselves on the global stage. Little plug there. But it was really important for us to put our names out there, so we become the hunted instead of the hunter. And this builds a flywheel effect of the best talent, the best investors, the best partners, the best customers. It's been talked about a lot in books about category building. And fortunately for us, we do see a little bit of that because we were able to attract a lot of pretty good media, and that really starts with good storytelling.
So talk about category building, and what does that mean? And explain to you what that means.
Sure. So I think if I narrow in on lactoferrin as our first product. It's not the biggest market in the world. Maybe I'll give you some a background about lactoferrin. So it's not very well known because it's a micronutrient found in milk. There is only 0.1 gram of lactoferrin in a whole liter of milk. But today, a lot of lactoferrin goes into infant nutrition because it has a lot of benefits around gut health, immunity, and iron regulation. I myself take lactoferrin as a supplement because it helps with iron absorption. Now, a lot of people don't know about it because there's so scarce lactoferrin in the market. Most of the biggest producers, Morinaga, Saventia, they're pretty sold out for the next couple of years. So there is just not enough to supply to the adult nutrition market. So for us, we focus on lactoferrin because of the price point, and there is a shortage of supply across the world. So we announced this lactoferrin focus about 2.5 years ago, and we were the first to do it. A lot of investors asked, well, the TAM is so small. Why are you looking at such a small TAM? But for us, it's about the gross profit margin, about value equation, not about the TAM. A lot of companies focus on the TAM, but if you're losing thousands of dollars with every kg of product that you're selling.
You don't make that up in volume.
No, you don't. So this is why we chose lactoferrin as our first product. And yeah, so to build the category around lactoferrin, we had to educate the market about the benefits of lactoferrin. Fast forward to today, there are maybe 4 or 5 other companies working on lactoferrin. But I know for a fact we are the fastest in research. We are launching a product in about 4 weeks' time with an FDA self-GRAS. It has been quite the journey.
Yes.
But we are very excited for that.
So creating a category, let's just stop on that for a second as well, because that's, I want you to hear what she's saying. She was starting to get into milk, and then she discovered there was a category no one was really in, lactoferrin, which was a much better numbers, and she was pioneering in that case. By the way, just to give you an example of what category building looks like, one of my favorite stories was this guy. He and I were doing a speaking tour in Turkey. He's a Turkish entrepreneur. He had created a yogurt. And when he took it to the store, everyone said, because there's 20 other yogurts in the store on the shelf, the margins are beat down. You're never going to make any money doing this. Mm-hmm. So he was trying to find a category. So he actually came up with the word, this is kind of interesting, because if you've ever gone to Greece, they eat the same yogurt as everybody else, but they put honey on theirs. It's just a thing they do in Greece. So he came back and he took his yogurt and he retitled it Greek yogurt. There is no such thing as Greek yogurt. We all think there is because one guy started marketing it. So if you don't know Hamdi's company, it's Chobani. But he was failing because he could not compete margin-wise for everybody else's yogurt. So he created a category. All he did was add honey to it and call it Greek yogurt, which is, if you ask Greek people, is there a Greek yogurt? They're like, it's just the same yogurt you eat. Why do you guys keep calling it that? It's because he took that category. It sounds cooler than Turkish yogurt. He created a category. And guess what happens when you create a category? Everybody chases you. Everybody else now pursued him, and that's what's going to happen to you guys. Right now she has competitors because they're all chasing her, but when you build a category, you get that first mover advantage is what we're in here to talk about.
I just have a question. So because you were the first mover, can you talk about how you secured your supply chain? Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll repeat it so people can hear that. First mover, there's no existing supply chain when you're doing something nobody's done. So talk about how you created that. That's a good question.
That's a good question. So I think it goes back to the technology that we're using. Because it's existing technology, we don't need to create a whole new supply chain. So our process requires using yeast, getting the yeast to ingest sugar and pump out the animal protein, the lactoferrin, like how an animal would, but without having to go through the animal. So the thing that goes into the yeast...
it's just that. I like how she explains it like, who wouldn't know how to do this? Who wouldn't know how to create milk without a cow? You just do the process. But go on.
So the inputs to it is glucose, minerals, vitamins, similar stuff as what would go into the RAN that I was talking about, vanillin. So it's an existing process. We don't have to reinvent the whole thing.
So, and by the way, since we're a small group, when you have questions, raise your hand. I don't mind doing this interactively. We have some things we have to get to, and if your question doesn't fit now, we may defer it, but go ahead.
I think you said a moment ago, the two of us together, human milk. Mm-hmm. But we started talking
Good question. So the first lactoferrin that we're producing is bovine lactoferrin. And we are working on human lactoferrin as well, but the regulatory around that would take a longer period of time because human lactoferrin has antimicrobial, antiviral properties, so it has immunomodulatory applications. So it takes a longer period of time for clinical studies to go through. I think the effect, how it binds to some of your some of the effects in your gut have some differences, but we need to run a lot more clinical studies to prove that it's really doing what it's supposed to do.
So let's talk about one of the challenges, which is when you're a new company doing a new thing, you have zero credibility, right? Even in our case, the internet was a brand new thing. And we're calling all the airlines in the world and saying, hey, check this out. And they're like, who are you? A couple people on a folding table in an office? And we're giant companies. You're calling Abbott. So talk about the challenge of calling these multi-billion-dollar giants and saying, hey, I want to talk to you.
That's an interesting question. I think one of the biggest dairy companies here in the Pacifics, I really literally did that. I just go to LinkedIn, reach out to the chief scientist and had a chat with him and told him about this idea. And I think in this time and age, a lot of these big corporates need to make sure that they know what's going on the market, and they want to hear about these new innovations. So I mean, every one of these, any self-respecting dairy company would have their own research looking into some of these new technologies, or their own innovation teams looking at acquisitions or looking at investments. So it's not new to them. They're looking out for these things, and they're very open to talking to us.
Okay, but you did a brave thing. You're telling them what you're working on. What about the fear that they're just going to say, good idea, we'll do that? Did you already have patent protection by the time you reached out to them? Or I just want to know, I want you to talk about the fear of a big company just taking your idea versus working with you in any way.
So I was speaking to Paul Pullman once. I was very lucky to be on a panel with him. He was the ex-CEO of Unilever, of Nestle. And he shared that for these companies, a lot of the strategy is around acquisitions because it's very difficult for big companies like that to innovate within the company. So they focus on acquisitions on companies that are about $200 million size. So that's what they do. In terms of internal innovation, it takes a lot to build a team around just one protein. And they can have an idea, but it's all about execution. I think what we did to where we are today, we're situated near UC Davis, right next to one of the best milk teams in the world. To dive into UC Davis, for example, their milk team is made up of 5 different labs just across the hall from each other. One lab looks at how the molecule is structured. One lab looks at how it affects gut health. One lab look at clinical studies, and they all work so closely together, shoulder to shoulder. And we have such close collaboration with them. You just don't see a lot of big corporates dedicating that kind of resources to build one product or one protein. So for us, it's about execution, and we know we're more nimble and we're faster because our whole life is dependent on this one product.
That is a really important point. She made 2 really important points. One is ask. It amazes me. People are like, well, I can't. Nike's not going to return my call. You didn't even call them. You didn't even try. She literally told you she went on LinkedIn, sent a message to the chief scientific officer, and they answered. Yep. And so many stories start with someone brave enough to ask. So I bring that up because a lot of times people tell me, that's what they tell me, like whoever the big company is, they're not going to answer me. You didn't even try. In fact, she is right. Big companies want to know what's going on in the market. They're smart enough to know that they're not agile, but smart, agile entrepreneurs are, and they want to hear what you're doing. The second thing, and I asked that question, it was a loaded question on purpose. People are like, well, they'll steal my idea. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you an example for a number. Google buys a company every Friday. And they don't literally, but they average 52 companies a year. You know what their people are doing? They're trying to find what cool thing that you guys built so they can just buy it. Many of their products, for example, Google Maps was not created by Google. It was actually created by a friend of mine named Lars. They bought it for $1 billion from him and renamed it Google Maps. Google Docs was created by a friend of mine named Jonathan, not by Google. They said, that's good, we'll take that. So instead of fearing the big companies, you know they're going to buy her. Somebody is going to buy her. You have to keep going because you can do it like you said, she said it right. Her life depends on this product. The big corporation's life doesn't depend on it. So she's going to do it faster and more efficient. Did you have a question first, though?
I did, but you actually asked it. I have a second one I'm going to ask now related to IP as well. So sometimes I get asked the question about the big companies, and then it sort of leads to, oh, well, you've got IP and patents that protects you. I'm curious to know, because you said you had that first hire with the scientist and then you got your patent. How important was it to have that patent early on in terms of having trust in the industry versus trust in the investor and sort of, what was important?
Yeah, so the question was what's the importance of IP? For us, the IP is really just for the investors because they want to see that in your data room. But things that we want to keep secret, they are trade secrets. Most of what we're protecting are trade secrets.
I have an unfortunate timeout before we move on. What time is my next thing? Because they started late, and I think I'm supposed to be on stage somewhere, and I'm going to give this mic to Ellie.
I think you're here.
Is it in here?
Yeah, you're here.
It is? I'm speaking in here next? Okay, let's keep going. Sorry, I just didn't want to be, I didn't want to miss my assignment. Huh?
Oh.
For the Hong Kong one, right? Okay, Ellie. Are you sure?
Jaron is here too.
Okay.
He's doing it with you, I think.
All right, so we will continue then. Because we got started late, and I don't want to cut time out of this. I was just going to let you take over. Go ahead.
So as a move, a first mover, what is the biggest threat for your company, and how do you scale quickly to become a global leader ahead of anyone coming?
So the question is, what is the biggest
Go out.
threat, and how do I move fast enough? So I think my biggest threat is creating the category. I think when people are asking, why are you choosing an ingredient that nobody knows about? That is the education that needed to happen from us. And now that there are other companies popping up making lactoferrin, it helps me build my story. I don't see that as a big competition. Because I'm creating a category, now there are other companies doing it. It validates that there is a market here and there are other companies who are doing it. So how do I move fast enough? So our platform, our precision fermentation platform, allows us to produce other high-value ingredients as well. So we do have a pipeline of other proteins that we're working as well. We can produce one protein today. I do expect lactoferrin to be on the market from other companies coming up. But what we can do is we be faster, we be more innovative, and we build the right relationships with the customers, sign the 10-year contracts, lock them in, and I think that's how we build the market size.
How do you, okay, so you have a process. How did you build a company around a process? Because the good news for you is your problem is going to be scale, right? When you're on the market, you're going to be flooded with demand. How do you build a sustainable, scalable company?
That's a good question, and that's the kind of challenges that I am working through today. I shared a little bit on different panel just now, but the biggest challenge for us in the food industry is being able to scale the production fast enough. It's a very capex-heavy industry. So fortunately, precision fermentation there's a lot of CDMOs in the market today who can use contract manufacturers to produce for us. But we also have plans in the future, maybe in the next 3 to 5 years, to build our own facilities, if it makes sense. But in today's fundraising environment, it doesn't make sense to build any production facility. But in the future, that's where we aim to go.
Okay, we'll do a few more questions. We're gonna use 5 more minutes, and then we'll move on to the next. More questions? If not, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Our first investors are still with us. We see them as an extension of our team. Even when we are fundraising for the next rounds, we ask them for introductions. The late investors would ask to talk to our early investors as well. So yeah, it's an ongoing relationship with them.
Are you looking into, let's say, chewable proteins as well as drinkable proteins? Like, have you got a sort of pathway into...
Why don't you just take out your credit card because you're clearly a customer?
So we're focused on functional proteins that are good for human health. So lactoferrin is the first, but there are other milk proteins that are good for your bone health, good for your gut health. So those are the ones that we're talking about. If you want to find out more, we can take it offline.
Thank you for the interest.
Yeah.
Did someone else have a question over here? Go ahead.
Do you do any more like any market testing before you actually went all in? Do you do like a market test with customer someone?
So we spoke to the customers about the protein that we are producing, and then we started producing the protein. So our test was really just networking and understanding and talking to customers. But today, as we are producing the first batches of the lactoferrin, yes, we are also testing the lactoferrin that we have produced in the customers' products, doing product development with them.
Okay, we're actually supposed to have a couple minutes left, but here's what I think I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Give her a chance to get out of the room, but if you have more questions, she is amazing. You already see that. I've already told you that. This is people that have heard me speak. I always tell people that the scarcest resource in the world is not financial capital, it's human capital. Companies don't fail, despite what they tell you, because of lack of funding. Companies fail because of lack of rock stars. Rock stars figure out how to do stuff with the minimum funding. Companies that become dependent and lazy on funding of average people, those aren't the people. Those aren't the innovators. In fact, you innovate when you don't have enough money to do what you wish you could do. So I want you to take the opportunity. Let her get out of the room, but if you want to talk to her more, we'll move on to the next topic. But you know how proud I am of you.
Thank you.
And how I use you as an example pretty much all over the world. Please keep doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Keep doing it bravely and boldly, like I know you always will. And everybody in here is going to be watching your story. Yeah. So thank you guys so much. Thank you. You are incredible.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? All right, so thanks to everyone for joining the session. So I think before we begin, I'd like to sort of introduce our Chief of Corporate Development at HKSTP. So I would like to invite Dr. HLU, the... I'll wait for a bit. All right, cheers. So yeah, I'd like to introduce Dr. HLU, the Chief of Corporate Development Officer at HKSTP, to say a few words.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me here. And today I'd like to spend a few minutes to introduce our platform for entrepreneurship, especially for technology entrepreneurship to develop their idea to industrialization in Hong Kong. Okay. So why Hong Kong? So I think after the pandemic, we have been gone through a lot of changes economically and a lot of changes in the business landscape, but Hong Kong is still Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is still a very vibrant place for establishing business. As you may know, that Hong Kong is famous for financial center and logistics center. And what I'm going to introduce to you, we are a innovation and technology center in Asia. And I think if you economically, you can see that geographically that the Hong Kong is located in very middle in Asia, within 4 hours flight that you can access to most of the population in Asia. And but if you zoom into Hong Kong, Hong Kong has about 7 million people. Looking at a market of 7 million people is just very small. However, if you look at the cities in Guangdong area around Hong Kong, what they call Great Bay Area, and there's 70 million people, 70 million. So it's 10 times of Hong Kong. So that size is a pretty good population size to test out a lot of technology and market your products. And this is a very complementary to the area in Hong Kong where business are established. Okay. I think the uniqueness of Hong Kong, we always talk about business, logistic, finance, but not many people know that in about 1,000 kilometer area, Hong Kong has 4 to 5 universities within the QS 100. Within 50, we have 3. So in a city that has many QS 100 university, the research capability and intensity that you can imagine. So this is a very good opportunity for Hong Kong to develop technology from research to industry. Looking at the Hong Kong Science Park, so Hong Kong Science and Technology Park Corporation, we are the biggest incubator in Hong Kong. We have about 1,400 companies, tech ventures from startup to some more mature company, and from 23 different regions. So 80-20 rule, about 20% of our company coming from overseas, including mainland. Majority of them are local entrepreneurs. And the working population in the park is about 20,000. So how big is our park? It's about area-wise 0.2 kilometers square. The floor area for R&D offices is about 400,000 square meter of floor area, primarily for the dry lab, clean room, wet lab, and R&D offices set up. And within the 20,000 people, we have a stringent requirement of what company can be admitted to the science park. So at least you have to have 50% of the working staff are R&D nature. So as a statistic, we have R&D professional of 13,000. So about 70% of our population in the park are conducting R&D activities. All right. So after the pandemic, and we are still open for business, and we are very much open and invite everyone if you have a chance to stop by. And we also want to invite you to the park at have a discussion with us and see if we have any collaboration going along. So creating value. So in the park, that usually when you talk about science park, you talk about GDP. Yeah, GDP is important, and you have jobs and creation, because we are also set up by the government. Then of course we are carrying some of the mission that to nurture R&D and industry. So in terms of creating values, the park company, we have about probably a few unicorn that you will just talk about. But we do have a mission to attract investment. We have a small corporate venture fund, and the gear ratio in the past many years, that probably the past 5 years. So and we have helped the company to raise about 83.5 billion Hong Kong dollar. In terms of Australian dollar, is about 16 billion. US dollar is about probably 10 billion. But the gear ratio is important. So whatever we invest $1, and we attracted $18 from the commercial sector to invest in the company in the park. So so far we have a completed deal of 300 deals, and have over 1,000 angel and investor network in working with our ecosystem. So these are the some of the examples of the unicorns. I'm not sure if you know there's a very famous prenatal testing called T21, which use the pregnant woman's blood to test out whether there are any disease with the baby, like a Down syndrome. So this one is invented by Professor Dennis Low. It's Chinese University of Hong Kong, a professor of medicine. And one of his research found that the baby's DNA somehow appear in the bloodstream of the pregnant woman. So that finding lead to one of his invention as a product to early test out Down syndrome. So this is a very significant advancement, and of course this technology they have been licensed to and sold it to Grail, another biomedical company, and he continued his development into other early detection of a cancer. Similar idea that the cancer cells, the DNA appear in the bloodstream. So the other, surgical robotics, biomedical related as well. So Professor Samuel Au, and there are a couple of other AI and logistic companies that we have homegrown, becoming the unicorn. I want to particularly point out like a SmartMore, Professor Jia. He turned from 0 to a unicorn within 1 year. And what he is doing is using AI in manufacturing quality inspection. Just inspection is so accurate and so fast that this one becoming a unicorn within 1 year. So they are also using Hong Kong as a platform to doing business and carry out their market expansion. That's what we call imported unicorns. There are a few. So in terms of the collaboration, we have what we call co-incubation program. So we collaborate with these big names to co-incubate startup. So what is co-incubation means that they do have some particular pain point and business problem, and we co-incubate new startup company to tackle their particular business problem or some of the challenges in their own right. So you can see there are many drug pharmaceutical company and some of the microelectronics and other area that we have been working with. Okay, and in terms of the 100 investors, these are some of the names that we collaborate with. There are They're in our investment network, and we encourage deal flow. For example, if some startup company come to us and asking, can you introduce us the relevant smart money investor that can help them excel? These are the pool that we have been working with, and we can do referral in this sake. So we are open to ideas. In terms of Science Park, besides the fact that we are a infrastructure company that help them to develop, we develop premises and providing lands that for the company to either building their laboratory, factory, or other business. We also putting a lot of effort in terms of the so-called soft infrastructure. So what is the soft infrastructure? Is basically your network. That's why we are here, that you collaborate with the Gen, so that we can expand the network to support them. But we also provide a series of service to facilitate their development. So in different stage, a startup company their needs is different. Like when you do ideation, before even you form a company, we give you a little bit of money and let you, stay with your blue sky, imagine your stuff and come out with a proof of concept. Before you set up a company, we do offer a lot of training, okay? And then incubation, you formally form a company and we measure you by milestone. There are KPI that you need to deliver. All right. So we also encourage early failure. I mean, if you can't make the milestone, you better go back to the drawing board again, and then we start the whole thing before you're getting too deep and waste your time. And then if you have viable product, then we have other acceleration program, and then elite program that give you more resources to excel in a different business. And this is the part that we support them to make the product, okay? Maybe minimum viable product, product market mix, if you will. At the next stage, that scale out and scale up, and another reason that we bring some startup here to this congress and try to explore the opportunity with different market. This is another service that we help them to commercialize as well as to expand. And particularly, I want to talk about one particular service that we do is the laboratory and prototyping and also pilot production service that you see in the bottom. We run a lot of these stuff. Although the providing premises is one of our major business model, means that we collect rent, and the money that we collect goes to supporting the startup. Making money is not our goal, So we set up a lot of communal laboratory services. So we even have an animal facility for drug safety testing. Okay, so that's why the tech company, they just basically bring in their brains and of course computer, and you can conduct your research and development in the park. And besides that, we also have a pilot production services for something like electronics products. And some of the startup has a pain point that even you go through the first valley of death for making the minimum viable product. You have to go through another valley of death where your product can or cannot be mass produced. The reason behind, if you have a product to attract investment, the basic thing that you need to do is that you have a customer endorsement. Customer endorsement means that you probably give them thousands, if not 10,000 of samples, so that they can test in the market. So who is providing the 10,000 unit for you? Okay, if you are so small and you don't know how to talk to the manufacturer to get things produced, the language is just not in the DNA of the researcher. A lot of the researcher, how to optimize cost for manufacturing, design for manufacturing. You trade off between cost and the performance without compromising safety. This is a basic. Otherwise, you spend too much time in dealing with the manufacturing process, you lost market. Lost market means that you lost value in your startup business. So we have we call pilot production services that train them on how to manufacture. After the training, okay, of course they get 10,000 units for testing market. At the same time, they get all the files for the manufacturing setup. Means that they can go to any manufacturer in the world that they can seamlessly produce the product. Of course, they need the investment and also endorsement from customers as well. So these are the services that we produce. So we so-called we call research to industry bridging. That's what we mostly do. Of course, we support them by different funding and also attracting commercial funding to support them. So the RIF is one of the key description of what we do. Okay. So again, we open to any of you that you may be able to use any part of our system to enable your startup venture. We welcome you to participate in our ecosystem, and we also like to collaborate more with Jen so that we can help the startup and the entrepreneur to expand the market and also expand the collaboration with the rest of the world. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you to Dr. HLU for that amazing introduction of HKSTP. So, before we sort of begin this best practices for, expanding your market expansion strategies, this session really aims to give entrepreneurs some proven methods and innovative approaches to penetrate new markets and achieve sustainable growth. So I would like to invite an amazing panel of speakers to really give us some insights on this particular topic. So first, I'd like to invite Jeff Hoffman, the chairman of the board of GEN, Rebecca Huang, the managing director of GEN US, and also the co-founder of Carle Ventures, Jaron Teo, the managing director of GEN Singapore, Mattis Zhang, managing director of Aerosim, an HKSTP star company, Peter Goldsworthy, general manager of startups at LaunchVic, and finally, moderating the session, we have Fiona Khan, the associate director of business development at HKSTP. Welcome.
So thank you for joining our panel discussions. As today we have 5 distinguished panelists to share their experience and the methodology and how they help the startup like to go globally, like from a geographic perspective. As let me get started with Jeff, because Jeff is a successful entrepreneur, very devoted to helping like startup like globally. So I would like to get some advice from you, like how you would give like the entrepreneurs to the advice on amplifier market expansion strategy, and what is the success story that you could share with us?
Sure. So, the reason we're here is that's the whole beauty of this park, right? Is that and I like that the last slide that you presented was open to all, because when you go to expand into a geography that you are not familiar with and it is not your home, it's not a great idea to try to do it on your own. Having a partner on the ground that's there, that knows the culture, that knows the laws, that knows the talent pool, that has the connections is important. So in fact, we went through that probably before you guys started the park, but we came over, so this was with the travel business. And when we went out to try to expand, we literally went to Hong Kong first and found out really fast that we were drowning because we didn't know any of those things. So we tried on our own a little bit, and it was not a good start. And we backed up and said, we need an on-the-ground partner we'll just share our business with, but we need somebody that's already there. So as I told you guys at dinner last night, we found a local partner, and we went to them and said, we'll partner with you. You help bring our business to Hong Kong and all the surrounding areas. And I don't think we would have been successful in Asia had we not had local partners on the ground. So I wish I had known what you guys are hearing today, but you have a partner, you have a friend there that you should go to and not try to do it yourselves.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. So Rebecca, so you are a serious entrepreneur and running the your venture fund like in Latin America. Can you share about like the experience, how you help the company like expanding in Latin America or like from Latin America to global?
Yes, in Latin America, we have a similar situation as in Asia, which is that not every country has enough market size to be able to just stay in the country. Also, we have a lot of instability from the political perspective. So what happens is that normally when a company comes out of Argentina, immediately they're thinking about expansion. Brazil and Mexico being the main targets because they're the biggest markets in terms of population. But when we talk about best practices, we often forget to talk about timing. And timing is probably a lot more important than whether you expand or not. I'll give you an example. In the case of Yelp, which is the US company where you find reviews on food and restaurants, I was really close to the founding team when they're just starting. And they just wouldn't go outside of the US. And I kept asking, why don't you go to Argentina, to Mexico, to Canada, to Europe? And they said, there's so much market still to conquer in the US, and until we actually get really good at understanding the operations in our ecosystem, moving too fast can be deadly for a company. And we have seen this a lot in Latin America as well. It increases operating costs. Sometimes you lose in learning as much as possible from your local ecosystem. And so the story becomes weak when you go to a Silicon Valley investor, for example, and yes, you're in 10 countries, but every country looks really weak. And that's much worse than having a lot of traction in one country. Same thing from Asia, a lot of questions that I get asked is when to come to San Francisco to raise money. And it's always much more compelling to have enough traction locally than going a little bit too early. Because San Francisco investors, Silicon Valley investors have a bit of an attention deficit. So if we heard about you last year and you come back in 1 year and you haven't exploded, then we just got bored, right? And so you don't want to give too much of an appetizer unless you're really sure that the next time you'll come and talk to the investors, you have something to show.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Hey, Jaren. So, well, we met Jaren in Singapore, and you are the ecosystem builder, and also that like actively like helping the young entrepreneurs to expand to Asian markets. Can you share some like from yours?
Yeah, first I definitely need to thank Hong Kong Science and Technology Park because 10 years ago, one of the companies we invested in our family office that I'm part of, we gave the first $2 million check to Professor Ma, who then created Time Medical. It was just an idea. He believes that MRI machines are so expensive in the market. The GEs, the Philips are charging so much for MRI machines, over $1 million. He can do it 1/3 the price. And how so? You don't need such sophisticated magnetic coils. You can do it with 0.35 Teslas. And we want to serve the market needs with neonatal MRI machines, right? Because babies' MRIs are pretty much not available. And what happens was no one was there to support him. He's a Chinese entrepreneur. He came to Singapore. Our family office looked at him. We invested the first 2.2 million check, and then Hong Kong Science and Technology Park incubated them. So they had the manufacturing in Hong Kong, and now also building a plant. They have a new plant in Hong Kong, and also building a plant in Andhra Pradesh, in Vizag, south coast of India, for another manufacturing plant to support the rest of the world. And one thing that we clearly learned is not about just the manufacturing capabilities, also the expansion of the business relies on sales. So because they are headquartered in Singapore, they are able to also access the ASEAN market. And the ASEAN market, of course, Singapore, as you know, we don't have space for MRI machines manufacturing. That's why Hong Kong was a great place. But the ASEAN market is very complex, right? You have 10 different cultures and languages. How do you do that? And it's not exactly straightforward. Apart from Singapore, because of the rules and regulations, it's very transparent. But we were thankful enough, we had some certain political ties and certain business owners in the space. We were able to sell to a couple of hospitals in
in Indonesia and some parts of Southeast Asia. I think it comes to a point where you need to know people. So in my work at GEN Singapore, we're able to connect deeper levels with the rest of the GEM MDs. GEN gives a great platform for us to do so. And we run events, programs to support these entrepreneurs because we know it's not about the amount of cash that you have raised, it's about the network and the quality of the network who give you the access, open the doors for you. These are things that money can't buy. Yeah.
Can I agree with you more? Yes. So Mantis is the general manager of Aerosim, so the aviation simulator and training system. So he also is the star company of Hong Kong STP. So Mantis, like as a senior management, that you have successfully like leading your company expand into Australia market and Malaysia market. Can you share like your journey, how to do that?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's very kind. Firstly, I'm still the managing director for Aerosim, not yet the general manager. Hopefully one day, hopefully someday, not sure. We homegrown in Hong Kong, and we are usually not very good in doing business entrepreneurship. That is the truth, because we do a lot of, when we do our bachelor, the way of training is to train us to be a work staff, working in the bank, working in the management team. We are not very good in taking risk. From the day I was born, my parents was telling me, Mike, don't take risk. Just go and find a job, 10 grand, 20 grand, and just buy a new car, buy a home, and just have your family, or so forth. So doing businesses for Hong Kong local homegrown is not very easy. But with the help of Science Park, we were being taught in a way that, hey, now it's a new generations, a gig generations. We have, if you like it, just have an Uber app and then you can do your business. So we challenge ourselves, and I challenged myself. I gave up a pretty good job of being a pilot, and also gave up my job for the second time, being a university lecturer, and do this business. And I found it very, very challenging. And just now your questions about how to grow in the other market. I would say I've been having a big problem in trusting people that is willing to help. So I've been into the market, talk to people, keep talking to the people, looking for different opportunity. And one more thing about getting started in somewhere is I usually start very small. For example, in Australia, I ran a shed. I ran a very small storage space to actually start moving things into Australia and demo and show other people what I do. So I haven't been very successful like Jeff. He has been very successful in that area. And he can tell you the whole story. I can only tell you the middle part of my story. Probably 10 years later, I will tell you the other half of my story. Yeah, but that's what I do. Like I start very, very small. Right? Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, thank you, Mattis. You're too humble. So, Pete, thank you. So, Pete, your mandate at Launchbake is helping startup to up and running in Victoria market. So can you share what kind of help that you are helping the startup here?
Yeah, I mean, to the panel question or amplifying your market expansion strategies, first, I agree with all of the other panel members. Obviously, network and obviously being able to build a product and sales. These are the key things. We approach it, and I'll answer, and we help in these ways as well. But I'll answer the question a bit of a different way. One of our core programs that we run, we see that to be able to export and be able to go overseas, you have to fix your home base first. And what I mean by that is really your back office. And it sounds pretty boring, but a lot of fast-growing, focused on sales, even focused on international markets, get a lot of operational debt. They forget about their HR ops and finance teams, and they can be the things that hemorrhage a company. I was a founder. That's what hemorrhaged my company. It was finance. It was silly things, not having enough guardrails in place. And all these things are things that can be trained, but a lot of the leaders in those spaces haven't been at a scale up that has grown so fast that it is actually breaking at the seams. And so that's what LaunchVic, our program 30 by 30, attempts to do, is to make all of those leaders world class.
Thank you, Pete. So my next questions that I would like to get the advice from Jeff, like what should company do to avoid global extension failure?
Oh, I got this one. You said global expansion failure?
Yes, global,
You know what?
because
The
you're
good
more global. Yes.
Sure. The good news is I think they answered it.
Yes.
Right? And especially what Rebecca said, because people move too fast. And I like here's what we tell people in the online business. People are trying to drive more and more traffic because they think that numbers, those top line numbers are what matter. Actually, to build a good business, an investable business, you need less customers and ones that give you a 10 out of 10 rating. If you have 1,000 customers and everyone rates you 10 out of 10 and they return to buy again, that is more valuable than having 10,000 customers who never come back and they rate you 5 out of 10. So the same thing happens in global. And Rebecca said that. People expand too fast because like we got to take over the whole world. Actually, you're not going to get a second chance. If you go too fast and your customers rate you 5 out of 5, or what you said, your organization breaks at the seams because you can't deliver to demand. It's a thing people forget sometimes is success also kills companies. You take on so many orders and you grow so fast that you cannot, in fact, service your customer. And you're looking, we're doing great, look at all these sales. Actually, you're about to shut down because in a social media world, when you can't fulfill all the demand that you sold, the market turns against you, the investors leave. So expanding too fast and focusing on top line numbers instead of early on getting that 10 out of 10 customer rating and doing a really good job where you are, that's the mistake we see most often.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. So Rebecca, you also are the professor of the entrepreneurship program at Stanford. I would like to hear from you how you teach your students when they get started.
I wish I was her student. She's amazing.
No, I laugh because I'm trying to debate whether I should tell you the story. I'll tell you the story. So I created a new class at Stanford called Redefining Human Creativity in the AI Era. I started to teach it because I really wanted to find out the answer, and the best way for me to learn is to teach something. And so I had these 65 students, they're guinea pigs, and I'm trying to convey this next era, next phase that we have. And usually I try to be very immersive because knowledge, textbook stuff, they can get anywhere on TikTok, really. They can learn entrepreneurship on TikTok these days. So I had a challenge for them. There are 4 students that never worked with each other, and they had a goal, a mission, which was to solve a Rubik cube in 11 minutes, blindfolded. Okay, so the person managing the Rubik cube had to be blindfolded. But they had a partner who could find information on how to solve this and communicate that to the person with the leader, with the cube, in some way or fashion. Then there are 2 members with undefined roles. So imagine trying to tell somebody blindfolded to make the moves. It's harder than you think, because how do you describe 2 to the left, 1 to the front, the red square has to be, it's really hard. So 11 minutes, the teams who are really quick at catching on, they looked at AI tools on their phones, and they had exactly the formula. They took pictures of each part of the Rubik cube, and then they had exactly the formula. They learned how to communicate. To make it harder, the leader folding the cube and blindfolded also had to do a wall sit. So their legs are burning, and most humans who are not super athletes can actually last maybe a minute, comfortably. So all these, crazy distractions. And in the middle of that, I decided to fulfill a very deep secret desire of mine, which is to throw balls at my students to punish them. And I'm frustrated, but you can't do that in the US. So this is, snowballs. They don't really hurt you. But I was throwing at them these balls to also create more distractions on their focus. Here's a crazy, interesting thing. 3 teams actually solved the Rubik cube blindfolded in less than 11 minutes. the teams that were actually successful had the person who was doing the wall sit actually lasted longer, so they could learn from their mistakes faster. They didn't have to start over every time that they had to switch people to do the wall sit all over again. And then the other key to success was that the two people with no role, it was for me a metaphor of the next era, right? Because we're gonna have half of the team in every organization will have no roles now. They're replaceable or they're replaced by AI. But when I was throwing the balls, funnily enough, a fraction of the students were just staring at me, throwing the ball without really doing anything about it. And a fraction of the class actually said, okay, so I have no role, but there is this obstacle that's coming to my leader, so now my new role is defense. So they were defending from the attack. Those teams did better because they had less distractions. All of this in 11 minutes. They hadn't really even known each other or worked with each other. And so I do a lot of those exercises that are metaphorical and that are very practical in understanding quick failure, iteration, communication, fun, playfulness, but also like redefining your role as you go because you don't know how to do that from a structured place.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. We hope to have you two having a class in Hong Kong.
I'm going to try it today.
Yes.
I was seated here, yes. And then they throw balls at us.
Hey, Jaren, I learned about your failure experience before when you enter into China market. Maybe can you share with the audience about that?
So our portfolio company, what happens is that they were too fixated on how they want to enter the market. Remember I shared with you about 0.35 Tesla, but then again, you have certain traditional healthcare institutions that refuse to use that, or they just want to use GE and Philips because they are branded brands, right? And as an entrepreneur, of course, what they have to do is to keep an open mind, right? Just like keeping it open in every case, is to find alternatives. And what they eventually did, you know what? Instead of doing for neonatal for babies, they do it for pets. Why? Because there are more pets than babies now in China. It's the same thing. To be honest, you go to the vet, right? How do I do MRI on my pets? There's nothing built for that. But the things that are done for the babies can be used for pets. It fits nicely. Yeah. So it works. So now vets are buying them, right? Yeah. So it's just about tweaking, right? Don't be too fixated on the use case, right? You know your product works. You know it does well. You go to where your customers will be, right? Because sales matters the most, right? In your ventures, right? That's why you do a business. You want it to be profitable. Yeah, so I guess this is one of the ways. And of course, many other things, the Singapore companies who are trying to expand, there was this program. So the Chinese did a program to get foreign entrepreneurs, give them the grant to use for China expansion. But one problem was they had to match with foreign investments in. When the money comes in, it's a little bit challenging. I mean, I'm just saying openly, without any caveats as what. It's quite hard to take the money out. So this is real problem, right? So what happens is that they know that they have to buy a lot of raw materials, a lot of key ingredients or supplies comes from China. China has all this supply chain issues already fixed, already all intact, right? The different chips you need, the raw materials, it's all there. So they use it as an expense account in China and then export the raw materials and ingredients out of it and have it assembled in Singapore. Yeah. And when Singapore got too expensive, they went to our neighboring country, Malaysia, which is 1/3 the price. So they are very resourceful in a way, right? Knowing how to go around, navigating through. I think that's something that we, through a lot of mentorship from established and experienced entrepreneurs, they were able to overcome certain obstacles and get the results, the end goal that they want. Yeah.
Thank you, Jaren. So Mantis, can you tell us what's your next market expansions plan?
Oh, we already have Malaysia and Australia, but still, I mean, I'm very lazy. I'm just too lazy. When it comes to time zone differences, I can't do it. So I just get very fixated. But just now, somebody mentioned about when I think Professor mentioned about the market, when the market is good enough, we really doesn't need to export into other different regions, or not yet. I mean, we can still, there's some still food on the table that we can use or consume. So in our next move is definitely be still around the Asia Pacific region. And in Malaysia, we already have working with University of Malaya, which is in KL. Then we still have the eastern side of Malaysia, which is the KK BKI Kota Kinabalu. And we had start something in Brisbane, but we still have something to do in Melbourne, South Australia, Perth, Darwin. There's still a lot to do. So we haven't been good enough. We'll work harder and even harder for it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Hey, Pete, I know you have a program that helping unicorn to do the market expansions. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, it's the one that I was just mentioning before. So we work in those areas of capability building for HR ops and finance, but the other part of it is helping them with their global expansion. And what we find there, and it's been touched on a bit, so I won't go into too much, but helping them with introductions in market through our sister agency, Global Victoria. So, feet on the street basically, and introductions from the local government there. So, to people who might be hiring decisions or regulatory, that's one of our biggest sectors is medtech. So if they're interested in the US, they need to know more about the regulatory frameworks there. And then, any other sort of networks, whether it's commercial as well. But I was going to add into the question that you asked, Jeff, earlier, was that, what's the biggest sort of not challenge. The thing that sets them up to perhaps fail is that we see a lot of companies, they might have a financial budget for entering a market, but they don't consider all the other elements that can be impacted. And things like if you're a SaaS company and you're thinking about product roadmap and how much that impacts with localization, and you just think, oh yeah, they're just going to use the same app, but actually it's not. And so you just got to really plan out those things as well as operational debt, like what else is going to accumulate because you are now taking on another tax region. And so people just go, okay, it's going to cost $1 million, but actually it's going to cost a lot more than that.
Yeah. So like for the company like LWSIM, so Matters, if he decided to set up the office here, would you be able to help?
We're domestic focused, but if Matthias wanted to move here and set up the HQ here, then we are all ears.
So there's one thing that I think everyone here is not for the money, but I'm there for the money. So I just got to be very honest, and I'm just now. Fiona were asking me what is the next big things. She was talking about the original one, but we entered Science Park as an incubator, and I'm not sure if I can spill this, but I'm just going to tell it truthfully. The incubation program is around 300,000 Australian dollar without taking our IP or any interest or anything. And then we also enter the acceleration program, which is worth around $1 million Australian dollars. There's some convertible bonds that we need to commit with. The next big thing will be, because we already graduated from our acceleration program, I'm looking for the elite program, which give us additional 4 million Australian dollars to actually keep pushing down to the southern market, which is the big thing for us. I'm hoping that in the next, I would say, 8 weeks or 12 weeks, to persuade my account manager for it. Yeah, that's the next
You will
big
get
thing.
there.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to ask the final question. So, I think you already cover a lot. So, I just want to get some final thought, and comment about the topic that I didn't cover. I really want to get some, more. Yes. Yes. Okay.
Could you ask a question again? Sorry.
Start with Jeff. So, anything that you would like to touch on, other than.
I already mentioned my big thing, so that's really my goal for the money to actually continue expanding my market.
I guess to sum it up, being an entrepreneur is do whatever it takes to make that baby become a success, right? Because it's all your heart and soul and sweat and tears and blood putting into it, right? So do what it takes to make it a success. Hong Kong is a great place also for Singapore entrepreneurs, but if you're also looking at Southeast Asia, you can also look at Singapore possibly, and we're more than happy to also look to support one another to grow. Yeah.
I think whether you expand fast or not is the metaphor I would use is, are you the kind of parent who can have twins or have babies in sequence. I have 2 children. I needed 3 full years to really learn from all the mistakes I made with number 1. And then by the time number 2 came, now this one will be perfect, right? But there are some organizations that are really equipped to doing things in parallel, and leaders who are actually good at multitasking and learning at the same time. So you have one office in Mexico, one in Argentina, and they do trade that information quite efficiently. Many organizations are not good at that. We are much better at having babies in sequence. And so understanding who you are is very important in this process of planning or expansion, and how you can quickly learn and iterate either in parallel or in series. And that's a self-reflection you have to have.
Okay, I will close this out wearing my hat as the chairman of GEN, and I am going to say that partnership is everything. We announced at this conference our new partnership between GEN and the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park. Why? Because we fundamentally believe the key to global expansion, which is our responsibility for all of you, that's why we created GEN, that's why we have GEC, is to help all of you grow. And clearly the way we think to do that is by partnering with the right people in the right regions, and that's why we are so proud of our new partnership with you guys. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Jeff. So thank you for your time and a lot of sharing. Thank you. I think we are end of this panel sessions, and then we can start to learn about the startup pitch downstairs. So we are excited to hear that. Thanks.